So the new character Khatun was released, and she's actually, I think, very well designed. She's aggressive, mobile in team fights, but in a way that actually feels like it has counterplay. And I think she's good at most things, but not too broken. But after a couple days, people have already begun saying she's weak. She gets countered by hyper armor, by dodge bashes. She's too frame negative, and I felt I had to clear some things up. I do not think Khatun is countered by hyper armor, because I think countered implies she loses. I think 1v1s are her weakest area for sure, but even there, I believe she's quite good, just not one of the best. Now let's compare her mix-up to some similar mix-ups against, say, Raider. Against Raider, her mix-up can be dodge attacked, but she can always deflect it. And while she will lose to the chain hyper armor if she inputs her deflect, she doesn't have to input anything, which is pretty much the same thing for PK. PK can also deflect Raider, but loses to the chain hyper armor, and no, she cannot deflect out of the recovery, it's simply not fast enough. Granted, she still has a decent amount of damage, but she loses the trade, and Raider gets to keep chaining, so it's usually just better not to input anything at all. Shaman just simply cannot deflect after somebody dodges a dagger cancel. Her recovery is simply too slow. Now, Ara is the best out of all of them because he straight up beats the hyper armor because his blade blockade is a superior block. However, Ara also has to get into chain to even use this in the first place, while the other characters can be used from neutral, so I believe he definitely compensates. But that's just Raider. Many more characters have chain hyper armor, but they all have different speeds. Berserker and Warlord will beat all three characters, while Meje will lose to PK but win against Shaman and is neutral with Khatun because she can't punish, but she also takes no damage. Now, dodge bash characters are also different depending on the character. You can't just look at one character and say, they have a dodge bash, so that must mean they're exactly the same as the other dodge bash. No. Some dodge bashes have better iframes than others. LB will beat Khatun and Shaman but lose to PK, though Khatun can also soft feint heavy, which will catch LB's dodge bash unless he's dodging extremely early, which I will point out this is a pretty fast reaction to not jitter on neutral GBs or lights, but also be fast enough to avoid soft feint heavies. Sheena will get caught by letting the neutral heavy fly if he dodges too early, and if he dodges too late, he gets caught by the soft feint heavies. Now, personally, if I had to place her in duels, I would place her low to mid A tier depending on the matchup. I think having a neutral tool like the soft feint into 400 ms lights is really good, especially because hers actually has a hitbox and they'll catch early dodges. Now, she also has soft feint kick on every heavy, which is always a nice tool to have, and unlike Aramusha's, hers can be used on chain heavies. But let's move on to 4v4s, as I think this is her better mode. First, let's start off with team fights. She doesn't get countered by hyper armor for the same reasons as before. She doesn't actually eat any damage. She can use her stance lights with great hitboxes to peel, bait, and add on to teammate punishes, and then full deflect to remain safe. Like, actually punishing this is dependent on matchups, and while, yes, it's stronger into certain characters because she can punish, that doesn't mean she automatically loses against anyone with hyper armor, as she still remains safe.
But Blitz, I can't just play her and everybody the exact same way.
No, you have to understand that into different matchups you play differently, and I think that's great and it adds depth, as long as it's not too debilitating. And that's not even mentioning that her stance isn't even like other deflects. It deflects externals, and this is a powerful tool, but it compensates for the strengths by being slightly stronger, into some characters, but not all of them. But she still has reads, and the enemy still has counterplay. That's the reason I wouldn't say she gets countered by hyper armor. So in conclusion, no, I do not think her deflect should break hyper armor, and while I do think she has a few flaws like her side dodge feeling terrible and tier 3 just being really, really bad, she's still a good character and perfectly playable in matchmaking or tournaments. It's just up to you, the player, on how to figure out how to play her into what matchups. Well, anyways, peace out.